Hello, everyone. It's time for another episode of our podcast, Reshape Hospitality with Tech. I am Maria, your host, and with me is my co host, Kazim. Today's episode is going to be amazing. We have a very special guest with us who is a well recognized and seasonal hotelier. His name is Robert Rauch. Welcome and thanks for being here.
So happy to be here, Maria and Kazim, and looking forward to the chat.
We are super excited that you are here and want to get to know more about you and your experiences in the industry. Could you tell our audience about yourself? What was your first job? And what comes to your mind when you're thinking about starting your career in the hospitality industry?
Well, I started out at age 20. I was a student looking for some part-time work. So I started out as a banquet dishwasher at age 20. And I just worked around the clock looking to learn everything I possibly could in warp speed about an industry that excited me, the hotel industry. I fell in love with it. I had not really loved a job before that. So all of a sudden I got excited. I saw that my bosses didn't seem to be that bright. And I figured, hey, maybe I can kind of get promoted and be there. So I can walk you through everything that occurred there or just start with that.
We'd love to hear that.
Well, the thing
Yeah.
is, as soon as I knew that I wanted to go into hotels, I decided to transfer to hotel school. And I really focused on advancing to general manager. And I did that in 5 years. And then I
Mhm.
went to work for Deloitte because Deloitte was an expert. Back then it was called Touche Ross, but we merged with Deloitte, Haskins and Sells, became Deloitte and Touche, and then Deloitte. And uh, and then I got married, and one day my wife said to me, "You're making all this money for other people. Wouldn't it make sense for us to buy a hotel?" And I said, "Where are we going to find that money?" But we went to friends and family and got 50,000 here, 50,000 there, 25,000 here, pieced it all together, made a little offer on a 52 unit hotel, and it was called the Ocean Inn, and it was 1 block from the Pacific Ocean. But all the guests were prostitutes and drug dealers. So the day we took over, we fired all the guests by raising the rates $50, and they all came screaming to the front desk, "You can't do this!" And I said, "What? I already did. It's over. So you're welcome to stay until 12 noon, and then it's the rates are up $50." So that was the start, and
Mhm.
we we ended up having far from an empire. We have a
Mhm.
one handful of hotels today, but we're doing very well and very pleased. And of course, there was a long journey. It's not like that was back in July of 1997 that we bought that
Mhm.
hotel.
As you mentioned that you started your career as a banquet dishwasher
Right.
and you have come a long way since then, right? So what were the struggles and challenges you faced along the way?
Well, first of all, the first, I guess, major struggle was when we sold the Ocean Inn, which it was an unsolicited offer that came by. We were content to have one hotel
Mhm.
in the family, but somebody made us an offer we couldn't refuse. And
Mhm.
then 9/11 occurred
Yeah.
because we had bought this land with the proceeds from selling the hotel, and then we put a loan on the land, and then we couldn't get a loan to build we wanted to build 2 hotels on this land, and 9/11 occurred, and I'm flying all over the country looking for
Mm.
dollars. There's an old expression called dialing for dollars. Well, I was
Mhm.
dialing for dollars, flying for dollars, driving for dollars, anything I could do to get enough dollars so that I didn't have to declare bankruptcy, because there's no way I was going to pay off that land
Mhm.
loan without some income. So I didn't want to give up the dream of owning hotels that we could build. So
Mm-hmm.
I finally found money, although I will tell you the interest rate was 25%. So when you look at, yes, the event that occurred here was 9/11, but it was all the things that occur, just like with the most recent pandemic, things that occur as a result of the pandemic, as a result of a big recession or the Great Recession, or in this case,
Mm-hmm.
the first big problem I had was 9/11, which then caused a recession.
Apart from your career and struggles, challenges, we are interested to know about the lessons you learned from your mentors who encourage you throughout your life. Can you share the name with us?
There were a few mentors, but there are some people who in the industry who I felt shaped my career, some more than others. The first one was a gentleman named Steve Rushmore, who is still
Mm-hmm.
around. I
Mm-hmm.
think his son has picked up the ball and run with most of his business, but he basically invented, from my perspective, accurate
Mm-hmm.
appraisals and valuations of hotels. To me, he was a pioneer. I read everything he created and published. And the next one is perhaps the one who really stimulated me to do what I did, and that's Randy Smith. And Randy
Mm-hmm.
Smith is the one who, along with his wife Carolyn, who unfortunately is no longer with us, formed STR, what is now known as STR, that was acquired by CoStar recently. Randy had
Mm-hmm.
the idea that he could go to four big hotel companies and form the data that is now
Mm-hmm.
the data that is used most frequently in the hospitality industry. And he did it out of his basement of his hotel home in Nashville, Tennessee. It was just he and his wife and Melanie, who is still with the firm, to the best of my knowledge. I talked to her not too long ago.
Mm-hmm.
And that was back in the 1980s. And he and I had met at the American Hotel and Lodging Association Research Committee meeting where I was the chairman of the committee. Peter Yesowich was another one. Peter is probably the foremost marketer. He
Mm-hmm.
really was a brilliant marketing guy. And there are
Mm-hmm.
two others in education. My college professor, Tony Marshall, who also passed away several years ago, unbelievable professor of hospitality law, and probably my leading mentor, also just
Mm-hmm.
passed away a couple of months ago, Howie Firetag, who was
Mm-hmm.
really brought uh, hospitality to the classroom in a great
Mm-hmm.
way. And
Mm-hmm.
he was a leader in hospitality when he was working in the field. And then when he went into education, he continued to write, teach, speak, and just a real mentor. So those are five. I've had many. I always
Yeah.
apologize for not uh, mentioning everybody. Certainly, my parents have been mentors. Frankly, my
Yeah.
wife and daughters.
Robert, as you are the CEO of RAR Hospitality, can you tell us more about it? And that, what is your vision for the company's future?
Well, RAR Hospitality was actually started a little over 33 years ago when I
Mm-hmm.
left Deloitte to form my consulting company. It had morphed into a hotel management company. We ended
Mm-hmm.
up with over 20 hotels, and then we sold the company to Hostmark Hospitality Group. And because of the sale, we're
Mm-hmm.
unable to use the name going forward now. We sold it in February of 2020. We had a 3-year commitment to Hostmark to not compete with them. And so now we have to take RAR Hospitality and call it something else.
Mm-hmm.
So we are forming right now, it's already in formation, Brick
Mm-hmm.
Hospitality. And really what we're doing is we're the management company we sold to Hostmark, but the hotels that we have an ownership interest in, we kept and we are
Mm-hmm.
managing those through Brick Hospitality. So the answer to our vision there is to have a company that allows my management team to grow and have opportunity for ownership. So I'm not going to be the owner. I'll have partners and they will drive the company, because I've been around now for a few years and they're all young. But my team is made up of people in their 20s and 30s, and
Mm-hmm.
just a couple of them just a little older than that, not much. And here I am. I'm a grandfather now. So I've got a 1-year-old granddaughter. So, I'm the old fart in the company. So, they really need to drive the company. And so we've set the company up so that they can be successful. And what I will do to move the vision forward is to train my team with my knowledge
Mm-hmm.
of digital marketing, legal, food and beverage,
Mm-hmm.
revenue management, sales, everything
Mm-hmm.
that composes hospitality. I've worked in all those areas myself.
Mm-hmm.
As both of you know, I'm now, if you don't know, I was a very skilled dishwasher as well.
How many hotel portfolios are you currently managing and operating?
We have 5 hotels at the moment, and 3 of them are in California and 2 are in Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
And we intend to grow very, very slowly because we'll be investing in hotels. So right now, there's one hotel that is under construction that should be completed in April of 2024.
Mm-hmm.
And another one that's more, I'll call it in the development process. We were all
Mm-hmm.
set to break ground when the lockdowns occurred, and it was kind of hard to get financing in that initial period of the lockdowns because nobody knew how long COVID would
Mm-hmm.
be in it. As we all know, COVID impacted us probably for close to 3 years. I mean, it's just now that we're back beyond where we were in 2019. So we'll probably re-up that hotel, and that'll make 7 in our portfolio. And I don't anticipate us being big buyers of hotels. I think we will develop slowly but surely. When I say develop, I mean build our own. So we've kept our hotels we've built. We built a Homewood Suites. We built a Hilton Garden Inn. I'm proudly wearing our Hilton Garden Inn shirt. We built a Fairfield
Mm-hmm.
Inn by
Mm-hmm.
Marriott, and we have kept all those hotels and have no plans to sell any of our hotels.
Being in charge of many hotels and resorts, what innovations are you introducing to the hospitality industry?
I don't know that we are I'm certainly not the inventor of robots, but we do have robots at our hotels. And I'm probably I'd say robotics is the single
Mm-hmm.
thing that differentiates us. There are very
Mm-hmm.
few operators who rely on service robots and housekeeping robots. We're big
Mm-hmm.
believers in that. I'm a big believer in artificial intelligence, but right now, the only
Mm-hmm.
uh, machine learning or artificial intelligence that is really robust is in the revenue management area, but we're engaging with Chat GPT, and we see a lot of opportunity in artificial intelligence. And the last area that we are not just dabbling in, but very involved in is big data, because the data that we collect through our property management systems and all of the reports that we get that are generated through our Hilton, Marriott, IHG, and Choice Hotels portals, all that tech data needs to be
Mm-hmm.
assimilated and utilized, and will be. And so those are the 3 biggest areas: robotics, AI, and big data.
Talking about the innovations, what challenges are you trying to solve through these innovations?
Well, one of them, of course, is employment. And I don't think robotics was ever designed to replace employees.
Mm-hmm.
But what we have found is that in our select service hotels, where there's only one employee on duty from 11
Mm-hmm.
p.m. to 7 a.m., plus or minus, some are 10:30 to 6:30, that one employee is not only alone, but has to deliver things to guests, because our guests, some of them are international travelers, and many of them are up in the middle of the night. They'll call the front desk and they'll say, "Can you send up some towels? Can you send up some food? And we don't want to say no. And I also don't want that night auditor, who's the only employee, to leave the front desk often. So we send up the robot. And on the way up, the robot can actually see the hallways through the Wi-Fi system. So it has
Mm-hmm.
a camera. It works
Mm-hmm.
on the Wi-Fi system. So if there's a hole in the Wi-Fi system, we find out about it quickly. If there
Yeah.
is something going on in the hallways, we find out about it pretty quickly, all without
Mm-hmm.
an employee. When we assist our housekeepers with our housekeeping robots, they are not to replace the housekeeper. They're to replace the task that creates the largest liability for us, and that's lower back injuries to housekeepers. So we don't want them to have to go into work in pain. We don't want them to
Mm-hmm.
have to go to the doctor because they were pushing a vacuum cleaner in a repetitive motion manner and causing an injury. So we take the one job away from them that they didn't want to do anyway, that causes injuries and workman's comp
Mm-hmm.
claims, and there's the housekeeping robot. The rest of it, I don't really think replaces employees, it enhances their job. So like when I want to
Mm-hmm.
do something in the way of a marketing message, if I
Mm-hmm.
use Chat GPT or some form of artificial intelligence, I can really create some content based on all the inputs. And you know, the old theory of garbage in, garbage out. If I give the artificial intelligence some good stuff to work with, all of a sudden I've got some great content that I can use for marketing. So I don't need to be the brightest guy in the room and have the brightest marketers, because most of my hotel operators are not born marketers. They
Mm-hmm.
don't necessarily have the greatest writing skills. And I don't want to use my best writers for mundane tasks like responding to reviews and social media posts.
Mm-hmm.
So artificial
Mm-hmm.
intelligence jumps in there.
Robert, first of all, you talk about unforeseeable circumstances, unfortunate incidents that cause hurdles for us, but ultimately lead to new things. Similarly, the pandemic, though it lasted for a good 3 years, but what do you believe that the pandemic has caused for the good of the hospitality? What changes has it caused that otherwise wouldn't have been made or would have years to be made?
That's a great question. And I will say this, coincidentally, during the lockdowns or pandemic, whatever you want to, however you want to refer to it, we were forced into not having any employees. We let all of our employees go. We had no choice. There was no business. We closed hotels. It was a very difficult period. I'll never forget calling all my employees in and personally telling all of them that we were going to lay them off but keep their benefits intact. We had no idea how long it would last. Uh, I made the foolish estimate of about 45 days. As we know, that didn't work out very well. But during that period, I think that we solidified the transition from what I call art of hospitality to the science of hospitality. And we didn't get rid of the art, although in many ways we now need to go back to that. But we converted to the science because we can now analyze data that we never looked at before, because we were only a group of 7. I kept my 7 managers at one of our hotels, and I told them, okay, we're going to wash the dishes, we're going to serve the food, we're going to check in the guests, we're going to clean the rooms. There are no bosses. We're all equals. We'll decide who's going to be on the schedule. Whenever you have a hole, I will fill in. I'll do the same thing you're going to do. I'm right here with you as owner and operator. And so it was basically my general manager, assistant general manager, chief engineer, executive housekeeper, chef, restaurant manager, and front desk manager. That was it. That was my team. So we served guests. So we learned that we had to use some science. So we brought in a robot to clean any room that was contaminated by COVID. This was like crazy stuff. So it created a need for the automation. And then, of course, as you know, employees didn't embrace coming back very quickly. So this kept going on for a long time. So we have really worked hard at how do we live with less employees? And of course, now wages have jumped so high that when we did return the employees, we've got to figure out how to be more responsible to our partners who invested in our hotels. We can't keep wages going up higher than the rates. And that's really what has been occurring. So we need to be more productive.
And also, one thing you said that you have deployed robotics in all your properties, and you're a big believer in robotics. But we meet a lot of people who think, okay, it's a new thing, it has come, and it will just fade away in the background. It will not have a lasting impact in the industry. But obviously, as you do believe in robotics, how do you think that will reshape our industry?
Well, first of all, I'm very sure that robotics will be very critical. And I've named a couple of things that I do with robotics, but let's look at what can be done with robotics that's being pilot tested at various places today. When we are creating fast food, it is not really an art to put, whether it's a burger or a taco or pizza. Do we need an employee who doesn't want to do those mundane tasks? Do we want them to do it, or are we better off providing a better service to our guests? The car pulls up, places the order. Do we want a person answering the phone, or do we want a chatbot answering the phone? Those are questions we're going to have to answer. But the truth of the matter is, we don't have enough legal residents here in the US who want to do those jobs. And while it might get people to say, what the heck is he talking about? He's talking about eliminating jobs. We can't find people to do these jobs. So I'm not eliminating any jobs, but these chatbots and robots can produce exactly what I'm talking about and are doing it at Jack in the Box and at other fast food chains. And then when you look at not cash registers, but we used to use cash registers in the business, and now we use systems. Point of sale systems is what they're called in restaurants. And we need employees to use those systems when somebody places an order. So Maria comes in, and Kazim, you're the server. You take the order and you put in her order. But Maria's tech savvy, and she says, I don't need to wait for Kazim to show up. I'm just going to plug in my order. We're doing that today in airport terminals all over the place. So are we eliminating jobs, or are we creating conveniences that our guests want today? Because the tech savvy Gen Z or even millennials, they know the tech so well that they don't want to wait for you, Kazim, to take their order. So they just want to place the order and get their food. That can be happening in any facet of hospitality today. So I view robotics and artificial intelligence as things that are going to occur. Now, are there downside risks? Well, I don't think there's downside risk to the robotics, frankly. Our guests love interfacing with robots, but the artificial intelligence, we really need to look at the bad boys out there, or gals, bad boys, bad gals out there who can commit cybercrime. So, yeah, there's good and bad with everything, but robotics, I haven't seen the bad yet.
To look at it from another perspective, you talked about Gen Z and millennials. These are the people who do not prefer human contact. They would rather text than call. They would rather have a self-service check-in and self-service checkout rather than a concierge. But still, a huge chunk of the travelers are people who, after a day of traveling, want a human touch or a human contact. And they're like, I don't want to talk to a robot, or I don't want a self-service check-in at the hotel. I want a personal touch. So, what about that demographic? Because it is still the dominant demographic in the travel industry. Will they be so eager to adapt to that?
Well, I mean, I think clearly where we need to keep the people is that art of hospitality that I talked about, because we lost a lot of that. If you think about, you used to check into a hotel, you would get your room cleaned, you had room service, you had people you could go to. And then the pandemic and lockdowns occurred, and you didn't have any of that. And so now we need to come back to that and provide really, really good service. Now we have to anticipate guests' needs. We want to provide them, in answer to your comment about the younger guests being comfortable with the technology. That doesn't mean they don't want touches. It just means they want touches when they want touches. Whereas the older guests, particularly the baby boomers, in many cases don't understand the technology, and they want to come down to the front desk and talk to somebody. And that's why we have to train front desk associates and team members how important it is to engage with the guests, to be hospitable to the guests, to serve them, much like a servant leader. So we have to take the management people and get them to understand servant leadership. Get out of your office, talk to the guests. And that is what will make not only the luxury properties, who are doing that already, they have to. Somebody pays $600 a night for a hotel stay, they may not want to deal solely with a robot and a chatbot. So they are going to deal with somebody who's a more knowledgeable hotelier, and we have to make that $100 and $200 a night. I'm just using those numbers because they change in time, right? I mean, a $200 room today was a $100 room 15 years ago, and it'll be a $300 room pretty soon. And those people are going to need service because they're going to get tired of spending $200, $300, $400 a night and not getting great service, very personalized, great service. So we are going to need to get back to the art of hospitality.
But that um, makes me ask about something else related to technology. We talked about tech savvy generation and younger people, but those are the people who like to do everything on their mobile phones. So if they are opting for a Airbnb or a short-term rental, they will just pay via Venmo or Cash App or Apple Pay. But in the hospitality industry, it is still sort of far away. We are stuck with the credit card payment methods majorly. So do you see that changing anytime soon? People could be able to pay with Apple Pay or any digital wallet, for example.
I think clearly, if you look at restaurants first, they probably went more quickly than hotels to the auto pay. But think in terms of what the guests have now. They have mobile check-in if they have the hotel brand's app or the hotel's app. So they can check in remotely. They can go right to their room, don't even have to stop at the desk. They've already, put their payment method on. So they don't really need to deal with any humans in terms of transactions. Whether they use Google Pay or Apple Pay, they can do all of that. The airlines have it, restaurants have it now, hotels have it, but the independent boutique hotels may not have all their own apps yet, but that only represents 30% of the market. And any guest who wants that can do it by having the hotel brand's app. So we're almost there right now. I think what we are is there with those who want the automation. So if somebody wants to be cashless right now, either because they don't want to touch dirty money, or because they don't want to touch a human hand, or because they just prefer doing business that way, they can do it right now. And the ones that don't operate that way can still do it, although I certainly see the possibility soon that we will go to a cashless society, in which case the ones who will be impacted the most are going to be drug dealers and prostitutes, frankly, because they're two of the biggest cash users. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying people who use cash are prostitutes and drug dealers, but a high percentage of their business is done via cash. And that's going to go away, and they'll have to figure out how they do business with with Venmo instead of cash.
So if I were to ask for the bottom line, how do you think the guest expectations have changed in the recent years as compared to now, compared to what we had like 5 to 6 years ago? What are the biggest differences in terms of guest expectations now?
The biggest thing that's happened is transparency. Guests know, they know exactly what's going on. I mean, if you want to charge a guest $250 for a room, they are going to know within 30 to 60 seconds what your competition is charging. So they have vastly more knowledge at their hand, and in real time they can make a decision. They go online, they get up $250. Let me see. Oh, this is $219. This is $199. They are not going to be as brand loyal if we don't watch our rates. So we have to be very careful with that portion. And then also they're more difficult to please because their expectations have jumped ever since the lockdowns where we gave them no service. They are seeing that the smarter hotels are starting to get back to the art of hospitality. So if you're left in the dust and you still don't clean your hotel rooms unless a guest requests it, and you still don't provide any service, and you don't have anybody standing at your front desk ready and willing to help, and you don't have managers walking around touching the guests saying, thank you for coming, is there anything we can do for you, and making you feel special, you lose.
And also, one thing, after the pandemic, the number of travelers is going back up. But at the same time, we talked about hotel prices are also going up. So, in terms of that, how do you see short-term rentals and alternate accommodations like Airbnb or services like that? Will they be a direct competitor to the hospitality industry, or they will have their own place and the hospitality will remain as it is today? Because you talked about this on the blog as well.
Well, I don't think there's any doubt that those entities, the short-term rentals, whether it be Verbo or Airbnb or any other, have a place and do compete. And both, well, certainly if you look at Marriott, they jumped right in and have their own short-term rental entity along with their 30 plus other brands. So I think there's a line where it crosses over into from a hotel guest to an extended stay hotel guest who may stay a week or a month or even multiple months to a longer term living guest. And there's a blurring of the lines when Airbnb will rent rooms for one night, but the target guest is a different guest. And a guest who wants service is not going to go to an Airbnb. So I think the younger generations like Airbnbs for two reasons. Number one, technologically, it's really easy to book. And number two, they can bring their friends and have a place to stay at a lower rate than hotels. So you asked about I think you were alluding to the impact of the competition. We're finding in the hotel industry that Airbnb products, short-term rentals, are really hurting us during peak periods. And the hurt is not in the number of people they take, but the rate we can charge. So let's take a Super Bowl where the rates are $500, $600, $700, $800 a night for a typical room that would normally be $150. We can't get away with that if the Airbnbs come in and are letting 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 people stay in a house for $200 for the 4 nights, $200 a night. So they compete with us during peak periods for sure in a big, big way. Otherwise, I think they're a slightly different customer. Sure, there's blurring, but there's blurring between gas-powered vehicles and electric vehicles as well. Some people get hybrids. So there's a blurring everywhere. There's a blurring in healthy food and not so healthy food where one, a person's spouse may want healthy food and the other one not so much. So I think it works out fine. There's enough to go around. Travel is a birthright. for anybody who comes from a first world country. Travel's a birthright in their minds, and they're going to travel. And now with the call it, whether you call it bleisure or mullet travel, where they have they put on their hat that's the leisure hat, then they go work for a few hours. That is growing and continuing to grow. So I don't know. I don't see it as a problem. I see it as an opportunity.
Talking about, as you said, leisure travel, we had a guest on our podcast who said that I can sell a room without a bed, but I cannot sell a room without Wi-Fi. So, what do you think are the
Wait, I can
base?
sell a room. Wait, Kazim, yeah, I can sell a room without a bed, but what was the rest of it?
But she said she couldn't sell a room without Wi-Fi.
Without Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, how
Well,
do you think the concept of amenities has changed over the years? Like how stock is minibar is not the question anymore because everyone has so many devices now. People are laptop luggers. They want a fast internet connection. They want to have their own Netflix on their screen or something like that. So, what do you think are the absolute basics that every hotel should have for their guests?
well, I think you hit the nail on the head with Wi-Fi, but you don't want to take the bed away yet. I, I I will say this: there's no doubt that there are minimum levels of service that we must provide. We must have a well-run Wi-Fi system. It must be up at all times. Anytime it drops, you're going to get complaints, and it must be robust enough to handle more than email. So, and I don't think there's a problem with tiers if you want to charge a small fee for somebody who needs to stream videos, but they're going to want smart TVs. They're going to want personalization. They clearly want and require very robust Wi-Fi. They want a comfortable bed. They want a shower that not only works, but provides a good stream of water and hot water at that. And I think when you get past there, I mean, those are the basics that they require, I'd say. And when we add to that, it's understanding the guest. So if a guest is Gen Z and they don't want to talk to anybody, and they want texts, they want technology, they have a completely different mindset than a baby boomer. And certainly there are still a few around who are what I call beyond baby boomer, and they're retired folks who may or may not be baby boomers. They could be, because I forget if the age is 75 now for those who are above. They're retired. They're all grandparents. They're retired, but they still travel, and so they could be called the depression babies. From the
Yes.
1930s. So I don't know. You have to appeal to each traveler. Think about it. There are seven, I think there's seven generations. There's Gen Z, millennials, Gen X, there's
Gen X, Gen
late
Y.
baby boomers, early baby boomers, and what I just talked about, the retireds or depression era babies. Those are all different markets. And then, of course, there's the difference between a leisure traveler, a business traveler, a bleisure or mullet traveler, or a convention traveler. We have to be, and this is where AI is going to come in. We need to figure out how to market to all those different, geographically different, and as well as just plain different types of travelers.
So you talked about. So I just got reminded of something. People have been talking about using AI to have a guest profile. So they could have their preferences readily available with the hotels. What do they want in terms of services or technologies, and how do they want their room temperature even? So do you see that happening? That when a guest books a hotel room and his or her profile automatically gets updated to the hotel, and they can arrange everything as per their preferences.
Sure, that's a question that the people who developed Ritz-Carlton, which is now a Marriott brand, they saw that years ago, decades ago, and it was designed so that when any of the three of us checked into a hotel, they would know what type of pillow we preferred and whether or not we had a food preference, whether or not we had any allergies to anything, whether or not we wanted a pool view room or some other type of room, whether or not we needed a suite, whether or not we typically traveled with children, or whether or not we were there for business. Those types of things Ritz had down to a science. The challenge was getting that to the core hotels in America, because Ritz-Carlton is a very small, it's a niche, high-end 5-star hotel. So my properties that are not 5-star have the ability to do that. Our Hilton properties, as an example, developed that software within the OnQ property management system in 2005. But training our employees to use that system, we found to be a challenge, because it required you to do a lot more than just check the guest in. You had to write down their preferences. And typically at the 3-star level, we don't staff the way a 5-star staffs. So we still have to hard enter the data somewhere. In other words, there's nothing imprinted in your forehead that says, oh, Kazim wants a soft pillow. I can look at him and say, oh, here's the guy with the soft pillow. But it's in your profile, but only if we put it in your profile. So now we do have the software. And I'd say most of the brands have enough of the software to be able to put guest preferences in, but we do a terrible job generally of training front desk people on getting that information from the guest, because not only does the employee have to enter it, they got to ask the guest, do you have any preferences? And the guest is taken like what? Because again, Ritz-Carlton has a clientele that wants that. Does somebody staying at my Hilton Garden Inn or Fairfield Inn or Holiday Inn Express or Cambria Hotel, do they have that expectation? Not yet, but they're getting there. So hopefully that answers some of that.
It does actually.
Thank you for sharing your wonderful insights. Now, I would also like to know your opinion on the hospitality conferences. Do you think hospitality conferences are important for networking with industry leaders? If so, which conference you never miss, and what's the reason behind attending those conferences?
Okay, well, first and foremost, conferences are critical for learning. And for most people in the business, if you attend a conference and you go to the workshops, seminars, and events, you're going to both meet people and you're going to learn. So I don't think that it will ever change. I don't see technology changing that, other than the fact that during the pandemic, we had hybrid conferences. I think people need to see each other eye to eye. Although they can fist bump instead of shaking hands if they want. So I attend one conference every year called the Lodging Conference in Phoenix.
Mm.
And I think that any owner, lender, vendor, or top management, leading management people, those are the people who should not miss a conference like that, because it's part outdoors. It's very, very casual. So you can actually meet whoever you want and everybody's friendly. So that's one. It's in Phoenix every September, and I'll be there next month in Phoenix, even if it's hot. Another one that I like, not quite a can't miss for me, but I really like it, is the ALIS conference, the America's Lodging Investment Summit. And that's in January in Los Angeles, a really great city to attract an international audience because of the flight availability to LA. So it's a broader audience, touch more formal than the lodging conference. Another one that is fantastic, but it seems to me to be spread out because they're you're in New York City, so you stay in a hotel. If you can get a hotel room at the Marriott Marquis where the events all take place. That's great, but there are others who can't. And so you're walking around New York City. It's a completely different environment than the lodging conference, and even quite different from Los Angeles. But talk about a city that attracts an international audience, and all the hotel CEOs and all the money, all the top capital providers are New York centric. So that's a great conference. And I don't want to say last but not least, because there are many, many conferences that I've been to or that I'm involved with that I can mention. So I'll mention just two more. One is the high tech conference,
Yeah.
which is technology. And I think I have not gone every year, but I have been there, and it's a great conference. And the American Hotel and Lodging Association actually created one that's similar as well. And then the most up and coming one that I think is going to be very important is one where I'm actually a co-founder of, Women in Tourism and Hospitality. I'm a big supporter of women in hospitality, and I think that conference will continue to grow. We started our women in tourism and hospitality through a young lady named Clara Carter. She's the actual founder. I'm a founding board director, and our conference went from just being a luncheon to being now it's a 2-day conference, and now there are women in tourism and hospitality conferences throughout North America. I haven't checked internationally how many there are, but I know in North America there are quite a few. So that's big.
That's so right. Attending these conferences give us the opportunity in terms of learning, networking with industry leaders. And a very important thing that I consider is that it helps us staying up to date with the latest industry trends.
Well, frankly, that's how I keep up. People say, how do you write these articles and speak about these things? Because I read, I attend conferences, webinars. I mean, if we're not lifelong learners, we don't know anything. And a lot of the people that I was brought up in the industry with decided they didn't want to do that. They just wanted to be this job, whatever that job was, food and beverage manager of a hotel. That's great. For me, though, I think our guests expect the top levels of service. And so in my mind, if I'm going to be a hotelier, that is somebody who wants to be able to teach others, because I also teach entrepreneurship at Arizona State
Yeah.
University, and my students expect me to know everything that's going on in hospitality today, not 40 years ago. And it's easy for me to tell people what happened 40 years ago. We didn't have any computers. I could make up anything and they wouldn't even know. But today is what they want to know. And so I have to keep up. So the only way to keep up is to go to the conferences.
As a faculty associate in entrepreneurship, how do you encourage innovation and creativity in your students?
Well, first of all, I let them know they don't have to be entrepreneurs. They don't have to start their own business. They can actually be intrapreneurs working for a large company or a mid-sized company and just develop something unique and just be a rock star at their company. They don't have to take the risk and have the sweat and fear that all of us who start our own companies know, that not every moment is a cheerful, mellow moment. So I just let them know you can still find your niche. You need to know what makes an entrepreneur. You need to be creative. You need to think outside the box a little bit. You need to learn everything that's going on in your industry so that you can foresee things occurring. What will hotels be like 10 years from now, 20 years from now? And I have to tell you, when I went into the business at age 20, I chose hospitality because I thought there was no way that this industry will be obsolete during my career time. So I figured, well, because there are industries that have become obsolete. You can see them every day, whether it's retail or uh, well, facets of retail, like even supermarkets have morphed into different things. I mean, because it's not just traditional supermarkets that sell food. There are stores and Target and Walmart and Costco and all that. So And we have to be aware in the hotel industry of, and I think I don't remember if it was Maria or Kazim who asked me the question about Airbnb and Vrbo, but those are competitors. Kazim, I think you asked me, do we see those as competitors? Sure.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to be aware of how we hold our market share and continue to grow when competitors come into the market.
Being a travel insider, how would you define your perfect vacation experience?
It's very simple for me. The only thing that I do that is work, even close to work related, is that I will read good business books alongside the novels that I bring. So if I go on vacation, my cell phone goes in the safe of the cruise ship or the hotel. I do
Mm-hmm.
not engage with the outside world. So my vacation is a lot of reading, a lot of food and wine experiences with my wife,
Okay.
and fun if I'm with my kids who are now adults now.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, that's that helps to form my time, and I just relax. I always exercise them.
You are a person of great influence in the hospitality industry. So, my question is, what advice do you give hotel owners to enhance their guest service experience by using technology?
Well, I think there are three technologies that are critical, and I believe that robotics is one, and I've mentioned that. I believe that AI, or artificial intelligence, and there's
Mhm.
no real need to know the difference between generative AI and whether or not Chat GPT is generative AI or AI. Artificial intelligence morphed from the machine learning that all of us use for revenue management, but it needs to be more robust than the revenue management. And I guess if you have those two, those are the technologies that I think are critical to take advantage of. I am going to come out with my trends, my top trends, which I do on December 1st of every year. And I know that AI and I know that robotics will be two. And then whatever comes after that, there'll be a lot, and it'll be half of the 10 will be tech, and the other half will be led by things like personalization, which, by the way, can be utilized by tech. So if we have, big data is the other one that I was going to say, but data runs through all of the technology that we have, but it's capturing the data first and then doing
Mhm.
something with it. So there's a firm called Calibri Labs. They have probably done more with the data that's out there, the STR data and the all the business intelligence data that's out there. They've been good at capturing that. So if you're a hotelier that doesn't know how to capture the data, I would call Calibri Labs, let them do it for you. And I don't have an investment in Calibri Labs. I just know they're very talented.
We had a great conversation with you as you shared a lot about your experiences and industry insight with us. Thanks. Thank you for being here with us today.
Well, it's my pleasure, Maria and Kazim. Have a great day and call anytime.